In short, any problem that I've ever had, drinking was pretty much involved.
Didn't have a care in the world. And then, found opiates.
I think I really just had fear of getting sober. I think that was I didn't know how to live any other way. Drugs and alcohol were my solution.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Addiction Talk. We have a special guest back with us. We've had him on the show before, but he has so much knowledge and such a great personal story. As many of you may be aware, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So it's a time where we really want to talk about something that is impacting a lot of people and disproportionately impacting our veterans. So we have Steve Kuhn. He is a U.S. Army combat veteran. He understands all too well the struggles that veterans experience once they leave or come back to civilian life. And he's here to share his story with us. So thank you, Stephen, for joining us again on another episode of Addiction Talk.
Thank you for having me, Joy. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, one of the things that I want to start with, Stephen, is looking back on your own personal story. What was the biggest challenge or the challenges you faced kind of coming back into civilian life and dealing with life outside of the military?
At the time I didn't know it, but now looking, in retrospect, it was obvious. I had no more structure. I had no more mission. But I think the biggest problem was I had nothing that was of value to me that was bigger than me. So we lose that purpose once we leave the military. Look, you join the military, you sign a blank check, right? I'm going anywhere in the world to do whatever I have to do, and I may not come back. I'm accepting that. That's a purpose much bigger than yourself. Suddenly you get out and you have a job at the post office or wherever. I was a security guard when I got out, a doorman. That was my whole life, and it was like, this can't be it. And you're just so frustrated. And also the fact that in the military, you have a uniform on. I can see if you were in combat, where you served, the awards you had, how long you've been in, how long you were in combat. I know everything about you. I don't have to say a word. You get out. You're wearing civilian clothes, and you have a 14-year-old kid who came up to me when I was on the door as a doorman and said, "Hey, look at this loser. Can he get a real job?" It's like those kind of things are like, wow, I just fought in a war. Right. I come back, I'm battle scarred or whatever you want to call it. And there's some kid, talking like that. So it's like your whole world gets thrown under. Your whole world just goes on topsy-turvy. But if I look back, it's the biggest thing was the purpose. I had no purpose anymore. It was like swimming in an ocean and not knowing which direction to go.
Wow, that's huge. And when I hear you say that, Stephen, as I think about your story, what were the emotions that you were going through at that time? What were the feelings that were coming up? I know just that comment from that young man to say, look at this loser, when you said you had been in Iraq. I mean, Come on. I mean, he didn't know that, but what were those emotions that were coming up for you during that time?
It was, I think it started with frustration and sort of a little bit of arrogance. Like, okay, I can push through this because, I'm a soldier. I've done this. Sort of, I'm tough or whatever. And you push your way through it, but then you realize you're pushing against yourself. And it doesn't matter how hard you push, you're not going to push through yourself. And I think the frustration comes to the point where you try, because I don't know how many jobs I had in the first year, when I got out. And I was in Europe at the time too. So I got out and stayed in Europe where I was stationed in Germany. And no one understood me there, that's for sure. There was no veteran thing back then in 1993. And so I think the biggest frustration was that no one understood me. And I didn't want to talk to other veterans if I could even find any. Because I knew that would just keep me down. That was it would put me in my zone of memories and just keep me in that space. And I knew that I had to break out, but I didn't know how. And so it was a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. I had PTSD. I still do. But at the time it was raging because I had just gotten back from Iraq less than a year before I got out. And man, it was out of control, I have to say. And so that kid, not necessarily him, but if someone else came up to me on the door, it was an immediate fight. And I would black out. I don't even remember what happens, And then through that, you hate yourself because you can't control yourself. So it's a cycle, right? You hate yourself. Someone else hates you or looks at you in a mean way. You don't like them. You start it with them, then you hate yourself again. It's like this endless cycle. And it's the same thing with alcohol or drugs or whatever it was. I wasn't doing drugs, but I was drinking alcohol. And it was the same thing. Like when you're the next day, you're like, oh, Jesus, what am I doing? You know, I'm a soldier. I'm disciplined. I know how to win, you know, and that night, get in a fight, drink, go to bed, wake up. Oh, what am I doing? It's this endless cycle. And no one was there to help me. No one was there to tell me what to do. I had no idea, you know?
Yeah, so you're navigating this new world. And like you said, the feelings of I have no purpose anymore. You go from being on a mission, not having any purpose. But I also want to help people understand what you went through. Take me back to your experience in Iraq. You know,
Yeah.
what you experienced, because you said you did end up struggling and still struggle with combat PTSD. So what do you think that you saw or experienced that got you to that point?
Well, you know, there's a few things you experience in war, and one of them is, of course, losing your friends, right? And as harsh as this may sound, you sort of expected that when you went into war. Doesn't make it any easier, but it wasn't a surprise. What was a surprise to me was the children, the women, the families that we had to deal with that were in situations where we couldn't help them. There's a in our book Unleash Your Humble Alpha. There's a story that I write about at a checkpoint after the ceasefire. I saw this little pink dot coming towards me, and in the desert, we were in the middle of the desert outside of Basra, about 20 clicks outside of Basra, maybe 40. And as this pink dot got closer, I saw it was a little girl with her arms out, right, like this. And I was like, this is so odd in the middle of the desert, right? And she was with some woman. And as she got closer, I saw that she was burnt from the neck down, and her clothes were sticking to her. So they had, I guess, found a dress and put it on her, and they were coming to us for help. And so as she came to me, I called the medic, and she went into the medic's tent or the track. And then when she came out, she was bandaged, and, you know, they did what they could. And we had to send her back out into the desert, you know, because she wasn't an enemy combatant. So we couldn't take her anywhere. We couldn't do anything with her. And I was, you know, here I am, this little girl, maybe 7, 8 years old. I'm in a helmet, flak jacket. You know, I got my 45 and my M16, wearing a gas mask, and I look at this big, intimidating person. And this little girl came out of the tent, and I told her, waved her here to me, and I got down on my knee, and I reached into my grenade pockets and I had butterscotch candy in there. My Aunt Boots would send it to me, and I gave her this piece of candy. And I handed it to her, and she looked at me and like waited for me to say it was okay to eat it. And this little girl who lost everything was in the Battle of Basra, in the middle of the desert, nowhere to go, took this piece of candy, put it in her mouth, and smiled. And every time I tell that story, I see her face. You know, it's like, you know, in that moment, I knew that I didn't belong anymore. You know, I knew that I didn't belong anymore. I knew that my mission in that very moment was to show her that there's compassion and love out there, even in the place where it shouldn't be, in the middle of a war. And I feel like hopefully I opened the door for her to see that there were people out there, or are people out there who care, and that this isn't the way, you know. And I had to let her go back out into the desert. And that messes with me to this day. Like every time I talk to somebody, where are you from? Iraq. Oh, you're from Iraq. Where are you from? Oh, were you there then and then? Do you know a girl? You know, it's like I'm always looking for this girl. I'm always looking for this girl, you know. And she would probably be about 34 or something like that right now, maybe 36. Actually met a girl from Basra at the same time and everything. She was the same age. And I almost didn't want to ask her any more questions, because I was like, okay, you're the same age, from the same place, you were there. That's enough for me. You have to be her. You know, it's like I was almost forcing it on her. And she's like, no, it's not me. You know, and so that's just one of the things. Or, you know, there was a couple times, you know, a pile of decapitated bodies, or, you know, I stepped out of my truck or my Jeep and tripped and fell over, and I looked down and it was a foot in a boot. I thought it was a rock. You know, there are things you sort of expect because you're in war, but, you know, the women begging for food with their babies and in the middle of the desert, and you push it away, of course, right? And you drive on, because if you're not mission oriented, you could die. And so, yeah, that was, you know, those kind of things. And you feel helpless. You know, there you are, the most powerful army in the world, and there's a little girl, and you can't do anything for her except give her a piece of butterscotch candy, to which she smiled, which makes you think, I have no reason ever to complain again. And you know what? I try not to this day.
Yeah, I can imagine, as you know, as you're explaining that, Stephen, to vividly, even like you said, years later, to vividly be able to see that little girl, to experience that, and just all of that. But I also know that you lost someone close to you, or got to experience losing someone in a moment. Tell me about that, because I can only imagine these experiences, but then having another experience like that.
Well, we were, it was the battle of 73 Easting, which is the most famous tank battle of the 20th century, basically 21st century, or whatever century it is. And we were in the middle of it. And we had what they call an FO, forward observer. And he looks at the enemy and calls for artillery. And his name was Sergeant Young M. Dillon, really good friend of mine. And he called for fire, and they dropped it on him, meaning it hit him. And so we ran up, myself and I was with the Sergeant Major, and we ran up, and he was laying there, and his helmet was cracked open, his flak jacket was ripped open, and I was looking at it through the night vision goggles, so everything was green and black, and I saw the black blood coming out of his mouth, and it was like almost as if it was a protector for me as I look at it like through a movie instead of seeing it in real life. And we went to him. The medic was there, screaming, "Don't die, don't die!" And I'm like grabbing his hand and his shoulder, trying to, and then he died in my arms, more or less, And that's sobering. That's sobering. I mean, at the time we had been fighting, I don't know, 24 hours maybe, or 12 hours, I don't remember. And you were already past your sleep deprivation to the point where you're so high on adrenaline and fear and whatever it is that nothing matters anymore. You're just sort of like gliding around. And when this happened, it's sort of like it just grounded you and just brought you down, like, wow, and I have to say, to my shame, the first thought that I had when it happened was, and this is to my shame, is that, that could have been me. It wasn't, wow, I lost my buddy. It was, that could have been me. And it's freaking selfish and embarrassing, but I feel like when I get it out, that it helps me heal that message to him. But I know he's up there, playing spades or dominoes, looking down and say, "Hey, don't screw this up, Kuhn." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, when I think about that and just some of the stories that you shared with that, it's hard to even imagine coming back from that. Coming back to the United States and acting as if none of this, not acting, but feeling that people don't even know. Everybody's going about their merry way. It's just life is normal.
No, you are acting. You're acting like, oh yeah, this is normal to walk around and have no mission in life. It's normal not to have battle buddies that take care of each other. It's normal to have to watch your back every 5 minutes because someone's going to stab you. It's like, it's as far as, you don't have many friends in the civilian world that you can count on like you can in the military. You don't have that family feeling. You don't have that brotherhood and sisterhood that we have, and yeah, you get out, you have to fake it. Otherwise you'd be looking at everybody and it's like, where did I land? Like, what is this? What happened to the world? You get so used to one mission, one vision, one direction, all for one for all, if you will, that when you get out, it's like a free for all. It's almost like it reminded me of a prison yard. It's like, that's what it reminded me of when I got out. I'm walking around like, this is chaos, like total chaos. That's how I saw the civilian world. And I was like, why the heck did I get out? I want to go back in, and I got out when I was 27. Yeah, it was a lot of faking and pretending that, yeah, I fit in. Yeah, it's normal. Yes, of course. And, oh, you're in a war. Yeah, I was in a war, and then, like a few, little bit statements, and then you move away from it because they don't want to know. They don't really want to know.
Wow.
Like, you want to sit down and listen to what I have to say? I doubt it. You just want to hear the highlights, the cool stuff, right? So you just play the game.
And so, Stephen, that's really deep because you say, one, did people really want to know? So you feel like you can't really talk about this. I'm sure there's a lot of veterans that are experiencing that they're like, how can I talk about this? Or does it make me weak or whatever? Having these thoughts running through their mind. So when did you start to realize that you were struggling with the PTSD part of it, that was coming into play? How soon after you got back did you start to say something's not right here?
Well, I was still in the army when I realized that. Before I got out, I was stationed in Schweinfurt, Germany, which was southern Germany, and I was just irritable and I was sick all the time and I had no drive. And I was a stellar soldier. I mean, not, there's, I was strapping, I was like really a good soldier. And when I got back, it was like, I didn't care anymore, and it was just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this, and I was aggressive and I started drinking. I usually fall asleep with a guy, Jim, Jack, or Johnny, and it wasn't a good time, put it that way. And then I got out saying that that'll solve everything, right? Because I wanted to distance myself from my experiences. At the time, I was young. I was 27. And as soon as I got out, I was lost. Okay, a couple days, nice. And then I just had no reason to get up, right? I had no reason to do anything. I had no mission. I had no schedule. I had no routine. I had nothing. And I'm just like, wow, okay, yeah. What am I going to do? And I got a job as a doorman. So I worked at nights. During the day, everyone else is going to work and you're sort of hanging around. It was such a strange time in my life. And then, of course, the fights in the club when I was working, which was every single night, because the doorman in Berlin, Germany, who's an American, who's a war veteran, every badass wants to fight you. Right? So they always show up and they're like, oh, there he is, all this kind of stuff. And of course, me with my PTSD, all you need to do is look at me and I was mad, And at the time I was probably 280 pounds, 6'4". So I'm a pretty big guy. So that's even worse because everyone wants to mess with you then. And of course I indulged it. I'm like, yeah, bring it, And that was that cycle that I was in. And that led to bad relationships. That led to a lot of drinking, no sleep, until I had a breakdown. Until I actually had a breakdown in 94 or 95, I don't remember. And I lost it, man. Like I left my body for like 2 or 3 weeks. I couldn't find a connection between my consciousness and my body. And I was, wherever I walked, I was above myself and everything echoed. I wasn't eating. it was just like, I wasn't even there. It wasn't in my own body. It was like 2 or 3 weeks. And I thought I was losing my mind. And then I came back I don't remember how it happened, but I came back. I woke up one morning and I heard my own voice from the inside, like you do now, and not from the outside, like I did this whole time. And I was like, whoa, okay. And I knew then I was in trouble, but I didn't know where to go. I was in Germany. No one gave a shit, and PTSD, and no one even knew what that was. And I didn't know what it was. Back then you forget, back in the 90s when I got out, no PTSD wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even talked about. And and I just hustled my way through. And then when I say hustle, I mean faked it. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm powerful. I'm strong. I can do this. And I would throw myself into my jobs, my positions, my careers. And I did a lot of different things. I had 3 jobs at one time. I'd be at work 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 in the morning at the airport. And then for the American carriers. And then from 12 to 6 selling German insurance. And then from 7 until 2 a.m. I was at the doorman. So, and it was just to keep myself busy, so I didn't have to think.
Well, Stephen, I think you touched on some really like eye-opening things. Like one, the experience that you had in 1994, like that out-of-body experience, that is huge. And then walking around faking it. When did you realize it had gotten to the point that you were having suicidal thoughts?
I think I always had those after I got out, but I never took them seriously. I wasn't one to feel sorry for myself. I was like, and it came to a boil in 2008, right? So I went through all that shit, and I seriously went. I did everything. I worked at the highest levels of the corporate world, corporate director of operations and development for a British PLC with 3,500 employees, 87 locations in 9 countries. I was a bartender. I owned bars. I owned nightclubs, right? I was in the security. I worked for NASDAQ companies, PLCs. I worked for, before at that time, right before that, I was working for Mick Jagger, right? And the only reason I could do that stuff and be adopted wherever I was, because I had to, because I was faking it. I was trying to be something that I wasn't, to prove to myself that I was better than I thought I was, because I hated myself for what I did and what I was dealing with and how I couldn't deal with it. Just weak. I felt weak. And it all came to a head. I was within a relationship, very toxic relationship. And we got in an argument in the car. And I said, get out. There was like the fourth time I was leaving her. So I was like, I'm done. Get out. And I was so upset. I was, again, 280, and I started crying and snot came out of my nose. And so I'm driving down the road. I hit the gas. Literally, she got out of the car. I hit the gas. And literally like 100 feet down the road, there was a speed trap with police, German police. And they stopped me and they're like, what are you doing? I was going like 80 in a 30 zone or something like that, And I get out of the car and they're like, I'm crying. I'm this big guy, it's just this mess. And they're looking at me like, what the hell's going on? And I'm standing there and there's a trainee soldier, I guess she's a trainee. She was very young and small beside me, a police officer, another one beside her, one on this side, and a couple across the way. There was like paddy wagons and stuff there. And at the time, my girlfriend walks up because it was only 100 feet. And she was evil. And she said to me, she yelled, he's a war criminal. He murdered people.
Whoa.
And I lost it, And I reached down, grabbed the weapon of the police officer to my heart's pumping. I reached down and grabbed the weapon of the police officer beside me, the girl, the young girl, and was going to pull it up and use it. And it was like time froze. And this young woman put her hand on top of mine and put the weapon back into her holster. And at the same time pivoted towards me and said, I know you, this is not you.
Mm.
And I was shocked. Like that completely disarmed me. Now you're probably thinking in America, you'd be shot. Well, 89% of all German police officers have never even drawn their weapon in their 30 years of duty. So it's not a shooting society. Very social. The German police were very social, very understanding. They put me in a paddy wagon. They put her in a paddy wagon because she wouldn't shut up. And I lost my license and my car, so I had to walk home. Now, they let me go after a while. And they talked to me, and they talked me off the bridge, I guess you could say. And I walked home, but I didn't have a home because I was already losing it, and I didn't really have a job anymore. And I had lost everything because of other things that I did. And I was renting out my apartment to another American guy that I had met who wasn't a veteran, just an American guy. And I had to go somewhere, which was close by, and that's where I was. So I walked into the apartment and I said, hey, Steve, his name was Steve too. I said, hey, I need a break, And I said, can you go get something to eat or whatever? And he said, okay. And I went into the closet where I had all my stuff pushed to the back. And I pulled out my uniform, my Army uniform, which I always had there, full medals and everything on it. I don't know why I always kept it there, but I kept it there just in case. Who knows what. And I hung it up on the door like this, facing me. And then I took a picture of myself in the military, put it down there, and I pulled out a Marine K-bar knife, which is actually, it's right there on that plaque, that exact knife. I pulled it out and stuck it to my neck. And it's razor sharp. And just as I was about ready to pull, someone knocked on the door. And I was like, I can't even freaking kill myself. Like, that's how much of a loser I am. And I had this knife in my hand, open the door. I'm like, what? And it was that police officer, the young one. And she took my hand again, put it down, the knife on the counter, and said, may I come in? And I was like, I guess so. And she led me into my own living room and sat me down. She goes, look, I know you. I was at one of your book readings because I had written a book about the Gulf War in 2003, and it was a bestseller in Germany. And she had apparently been to one of my readings and knew who I was. And she said, this is not you. You're a wonderful man. You're going to change the world. You're going to get married and have kids and be happy. And I was like, who the hell are you? Like, what is this? And she got up and gave me the German bussy, kissing and walked out. And I'm standing there frozen with like, did this just happen? Did this whole day even happen? Did I dream all this? I don't, to this day, it's like, I don't even know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know, you know, but I mean, it happened, of course, but I don't know how far out, stretched out it is in my mind. Did that happen? I don't know, but it doesn't matter because she saved me.
Because you were that close, Stephen. I mean,
Yeah.
first you have the incident, you know, with the police officers, and this same woman stops you from, you know, that in that moment. And then you go home and you say, even though they said, you know, don't do this, you're like, I'm still going to do it. And then you have that moment. So what happened? How did you, I mean, we're looking at you today.
Yeah.
And you are you're successful. You are an author, you know, written several books, a professional, you coach people, you work with veterans across the globe. What shifted? What happened? Tell me from that.
Well, right after she left, I called my friend Michael in Austria and I said, brother, if you don't come and get me, I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. And he sent me a plane ticket. I flew to Austria the next morning, and he picked me up and brought me to a Benedictine monastery in the middle of the mountains of Austria and said, go in there for a while. And that's what I did. And what I found there was that everything on the outside had nothing to do with who I was on the inside, but I was producing it. I was projecting the entire outside, and that everything came from me, that all those situations and everything that happened to me, it all came from me, you know, and to realize that you're your own biggest enemy, you know, your worst enemy, but also to realize that you can change anything and everything was amazing for me. So I stayed there for, I don't know if it's 6 or 8 months. And then I went back to Berlin, and I had like a year of just coming to terms with who I was for real. And I had a job 3 days a week at night in the club, and I was a gentleman doorman. So I wore a suit and tie, and got actually famous for that in Berlin because everyone else was doormen, leather jackets, and, you know, I was wearing a suit and tie. A wonderful evening. I would sing, and I would just have fun and joy, right? And it didn't matter to me. You know, I just wanted to have joy and spread joy. Because I realized in that moment, first of all, you know, it's a process. But first of all, when I give and I help people and I made people feel good, I felt good. So I'm like, okay, I want to be selfish. I'm going to help as many people as possible so I can feel good, right? You know? And then through time, you realize, okay, you can only give from a full cup and not from an empty cup. And that's what I was doing. So I was always drained. So how do I fill my cup? What do I do? So all these processes that go all the way through. It's actually in our book, Unleash Your Humble Alpha, that you can read about how I went through the process. But what's different now is I have an operating system that I can articulate. There's an operating system that I can follow that you know, myself and Lane Balone, my co-author, who's a Special Forces Green Beret veteran, have articulated and brought to the surface, where I know why I do what I do, how I do what I do, when I do what I do. And I know all of these things. So I can tell you the core principles of what I live by. I can tell you how I take every single meeting, how I create space with the world around me. I can tell you how I elevate others, leave people in a better place than when I met them, and how the purpose of everything that I do is one thing. It leads to that one thing, and that's quality of life. And quality of life is.
So am I hearing you in all of this, going to the monastery, having all of this experience? You said you didn't have a mission before.
Right.
You go to this monastery, you know, you have this amazing experience, and you realize that I can create the life that I want.
Yes.
And not only that, which I think is so powerful, Stephen, but you found a mission.
Yeah. Yeah. And that mission, the thing about missions and purpose is they're always morphing, right? So we talk about identity, purpose, and certainty. I had to find out who I was. You can't get anywhere massively, you know, life changing, unless you know where you're coming from, right? Who are you really? Like, what's your true identity? And most people don't know that. They associate with a title or a position, or I'm a veteran, or where I've done. No, that's what you've done. That's what you do. That's your job. Who are you actually? And that's a hard question to answer. And so we broke it down in our book on actually how to find that identity. So it's identity. And through that, you crystallize your purpose. And through that, you have certainty in your life, and your ability to deploy your talents to navigate the world to your standards. Mm-hmm. And that's how we live now. That's how I live now.
And what is that like to live like that now? Now that you have found, I mean, I want your story, you know, to be inspiration to some veteran who's struggling. So how would you describe your life now? I know you said you still the PTSD is still
Yeah.
there. But what is life like today?
I've been hearing it a lot lately because we're on a trajectory, a very steep trajectory of success right now with our book. And the book became a university curriculum. It's now at Forbes Business School. It's getting put into the bachelor's program in the UK and an executive MBA program into the Middle East and Far East. It's huge. People say, "Oh, you're living the dream life." I'm like, no, I'm living life on purpose to my terms, right? And my terms are good, positive, uplifting, elevating, right? That's how I want to live my life, because when I emit that frequency, the highest frequency possible, vibe, whatever you want to call it, vibration, that's what I attract. So if I'm depressed, I'm upset, I'm mad, I'm frustrated, that's what I'm going to attract. And I've realized this over time that that's real. That's not just some gobbledygook that someone's saying. I've lived it, right? And I'm not going to say that it's always. There's Lane right there. Lane just commented. Appreciate your brother too, man. It's not always easy. There's times, Lane can attest. He's my best friend, my brother, my everything, and this guy knows me more than probably my wife, and in certain aspects. And there's times where I'm like, dude, I don't, like what? You sort of go back in that path again, but we know that that's our own doing, and that since we can dictate our own reality, well, I can dictate the PTSD. So I'll get up in the morning and I could easily walk down here and grab that knife and stick it in my neck, because that's just the way I feel when I wake up. Sometimes I had a dream or whatever, but I lay there and I'm like, no, you're not doing this to me. Right? I see you. I acknowledge you. I understand where you come from. Bring it. What do you got? You're not going to stick around long. So bring whatever you got, and it'll go through my head. I will visualize it as a thing, goes through my body, and it leaves. And it's on the floor. And I'm like, are you done? Good. Bye. And it leaves. That's how I deal with my PTSD now. It's there. It comes back. I dream and all that kind of stuff. But I deal with it in a positive way, because I know if I take that first step down those stairs, it's a spiral.
Wow.
Right.
So, Stephen, as we're wrapping up your interview, I did have like 2 last questions for you. What do you hope veterans who are listening to this today will learn from your story? If there was one central thing that you felt like you want them to walk away with, what would that be?
I think it's you have everything you need inside of you right now. You just need to realize that you can receive, receive the ability to let it out. We're not the outside. We're not our past. The past does not have to dictate your future. Just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it has to happen in the future. Like when you come up to a situation that you've had in the past where it was bad, change it. Change it. It's all within your power. It's incredible how powerful we are when we focus on one thing, and that's the intention, not the outcome. If I focus on the outcome and have an expectation, I'm going to be disappointed if it doesn't come out that way. So we have a rule: no expectations unless they're verbalized, right? And if you can't verbalize an expectation to somebody, then you can't have it. Focus on the intention and not the outcome, and life is beautiful. Imagine never being disappointed because you don't have any expectations, unless you verbalize them. Imagine that. That's 25% of your life right there, freed up for what? For quality of life, right? I mean, it's incredible. So you have it all within you. I don't want to pitch our book, but if you want to grab the book, Unleash Your Humble Alpha, it's going to help you massively, because both Lane and I are veterans, and we went through this, and we deal with this, and we're quite successful at it. And so there's a way. We have the Vetpreneur Tribe, which is 15,500 veteran entrepreneurs on Facebook. We have the Warrior Council, which is a paid group. We have our coaching program in group or on one-on-one called the Humble Alpha Paradigm Upgrade Program, where we teach you this, where we say, look, it's all about your identity, purpose, and certainty. And once you have certainty, you don't have to worry about how you're going to do anything, because it's going to happen because you're certain it will. And that's how we live every single day. And when you get up like that, even with a little bit of PTSD, and you want to do, you drive on, but not driving through. You drive on, acknowledge, accept, receive, and move.
Well, Stephen, you have so much. I mean, just from your story, you have so much knowledge. I mean, you've gained so much from your experience, and just writing the book and sharing this with other veterans, you've given us so much. And I know there's so many ways that people can connect with you, like you talked about through the organizations you're working with, they can get your book to see some of the things that you're doing. Right. My final question for you is, there's a lot of us looking from the outside in.
Right.
We're not the veteran, we're the family. How do we help our loved one through this process?
That's a difficult one because everyone says something different. First of all, veterans are very strange. When you say thank you for your service, they get all weird. Right. And I had to realize a long time ago is that when I say, well, no, it's okay for my job and it's okay, don't thank me, that kind of stuff, like most veterans say, or many, is that when I do that, I'm robbing them of the opportunity to do the only thing they can for me, and that's to say thank you. Well, that's the first step, is be able to receive the thank you, be able to receive the gifts, be able to receive the love of others, even if you don't love yourself. And here's the deal. And this is the real deal. And this is going to be profound for some people listening, is that to the degree that I love, accept, and embrace myself is the degree that I will allow others to love and embrace and accept myself. So when I know that and I hit a wall and I'm pushing someone away, it's because they've reached the limit of my own belief in myself, my own love in myself, my own acceptance of myself. And so when you realize this, you start looking at people differently. So look, they're trying to help me. Then I don't need to push them away. Like, let me help myself. Let me help them. Help me help myself. And so there's a whole, I could get into this whole thing, but I can just tell you this, understanding, feeling sorry for, I don't know what you want to call it, veterans isn't a good thing, in my opinion, right? Stand up with them, help them stand up, but they got to do it themselves. There's a lot of people that label themselves veteran. We have friends that wear disabled veteran shirts all over the place. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, what's that for? What are you trying to invoke? What are you trying to, well, that's who I am. That's not who you are, man. That's a part of you. It's part of your past. It's formed you, but who are you really? And then when you know your true identity, that's when you come out powerfully. And that's what Lane and I work with all these clients with. And I'll tell you what, it's a 3-month program for 12 days or for 12 hours over 3 months. It doesn't get any shorter than that. You have both of us together at the same time. And I'll tell you, these people walk in and they walk out a completely different person to the degree that they could never even fathom. And it surprises us ourselves too, because it's just so powerful when you unlock that, what's inside of you for real. And guess what? Everybody has it. Everybody has it. So,
well, Stephen, you have given us a lot. And, I just want to say, I know you said you support veterans. We here at American Addiction Centers, we want to let people know that if you're struggling and it's addiction or PTSD, we do, offer services for that as well. So just knowing between, all the great things that you're doing and all the resources that are out there, that veterans do not have to feel alone in this process. Families don't have to feel alone in this process. And so, Stephen, I just want to thank you for being so transparent, so vulnerable, and just sharing your journey and experience with you. And thank you for all you're doing for the veterans. I know you said that's hard to accept, but I just want to say thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for what you're doing now to help veterans all over the world.
Thank you so much. And I have no issue at all saying thank you for that. No issue at all. So thank you for that. I would just like to remind everyone, if you're in Houston, Texas on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of November, we're having an event. You can look it up. It's called the HAVE event, Humble Alpha Veteran Empowerment Event. And we're working with Mark Rockefeller, Street Shares. We're giving $80,000 away in prizes for veteran entrepreneurs who enter the pitch contest, and a whole bunch more going on.
Wow, sounds like a great event. And we just want to thank everyone for joining us today for another episode of Addiction Talk. And Stephen, thank you again. And everyone, have a great day.
Thank you so much.